Oh, hey, what are you guys doing here? My thoughts on the new Wimpy Kid? Well, you're gonna have to wait a little longer because I'm still reading it. What do you mean, The Last Straw? That book's old. I reviewed it like 10 years ago. What do you mean, animated film? No, that's not true. That's impossible. No! Alright, let's take a look. That's right, folks. Just when I think they're done making animated Wimpy Kid movies, they come roaring back to bite me in the ass. This movie is based off the third book, The Last Straw. Oh great, so they're going back to books that have already been adapted. Now some of you are thinking, Aaron, what are you talking about? They never made a Last Straw movie. Well, just let my obnoxious past self explain it.
Most people complain there isn't a Last Straw movie. They skipped and went straight to Dog Days. Well, actually, no, they didn't. If you were to pay attention, half of the third book is in the second movie, and the other half of the third book is in this movie.
Now, despite the fact that I'm currently working on a time machine to go back and punch myself in the face, what I said is true. The live-action Dog Days adapted the plot of the Last Straw book with elements of the Dog Days book. And you know what? They actually did a great job adapting both books into one movie. But this animated movie is simply just adapting the Last Straw book with tiny elements such as Greg and Raleigh walking the kindergartners from the first book and the Student of the Week sticker from Cabin Fever. But other than that, this movie is more stuff we've already seen before, and stuff that was just done better in the live-action movies. It's why it shouldn't come as a surprise that I didn't enjoy this movie very much. Greg's dad threatening to send him to a military academy. We've seen that. Greg at church trying to cover up a chocolate stain. We've seen that. Greg using a different name to get out of trouble. We've seen that. Some of you might think, well, Aaron, both The Last Straw and live-action Dog Days movie are based off the same book, so as a result, it's inevitable to have some of the same scenes. I get that, but this is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, a comedy franchise, which means if you put the same jokes and situations as previous movies, even if you're trying to be accurate to the book, I'm not going to find it funny a second time. The movie takes place around Christmas, which I suppose is their way of switching it up, but you also already had a Christmas setting in the last movie. I was hoping that maybe because they took a year off, the movie would feel different from the previous animated films, but no, it's just as generic as before. And before you say I went into this movie wanting to hate it, that's simply not true. In fact, I was somewhat enjoying the movie for the first 20 or so minutes, despite some of the repeated gags as I mentioned. There's actually some decent jokes that I thought were funny, such as Roderick urging Greg to hurry so he doesn't have to stand in church, and the lady waking up after passing out and thinking she went to heaven. That was actually pretty good. Greg and Raleigh's voice actors have changed again. Greg is voiced by Aaron Harris, and Raleigh is voiced by Jude Zarzaire. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, and they do a fine enough job. There are some nice moments towards the end between Greg and his dad, and I like Frank realizing him and Greg are more similar than he thought. But that's pretty much where my positives end. The rest of the movie was not very good. Even the new stuff that's not in the book, I didn't care for at all. There's a lot of slapstick comedy in this movie, and I guess they take advantage of the fact that it's animated to show a bunch of over-the-top slapstick, such as Greg bumping into this, which causes this thing to hit something else, and it just doesn't feel like Wimpy Kid to me. Just a side note, they do more comedy with Fragley in this movie, with him being the creepy kid that Greg wants nothing to do with. But his appearance in this movie just made me think of Cletus Cassidy / Carnage. I mean, they're both psychotic redheads, and if that wasn't enough, I'm not kidding when I say that one of Fragley's lines in this movie is him shouting Carnage, so that's just something interesting I wanted to point out. Also, one of the kindergartners randomly says Zooey Mama just because, get it? That's the phrase Wimpy Kid is known for. I don't think this movie is completely awful. Like I said, there's a few good jokes and some heartwarming moments, but not anything that's worth recommending or saying it's a huge improvement upon the previous animated films. If someone were to call this the best animated film so far, I suppose I wouldn't argue with that, given that it was funny at times, and they actually do seem to take their time with the story, unlike the first film in Roderick Rules, which felt rushed. But The Last Straw is still not very impressive to me. I'm gonna give Diary of Wimpy Kid The Last Straw a 5.5 out of 10. I think the most frustrating part about these animated films is that they're not truly awful movies. They're just so baseline and boring. They each play it safe. Every time I watch one of these movies, I always just want to go back and watch the original live-action trilogy to get the bland taste out of my mouth. It feels like they're making these animated movies because, for one, they don't want another long-haul situation, and two, they know it's going to be hard to top the original trilogy. But there's a part of me that actually wants to see them try another live-action movie at this point. Say what you want about the long haul. Is it a good movie? Absolutely not. But I will give it something over the animated movies. You can tell that people were actually putting effort into adapting the book and placing it into an actual world. Did they succeed? Of course not. But at least I can look at that movie and recognize that they actually tried despite failing. When I look at the animated movies, I think two things. One is that they're playing it safe, and as a result, it just ends up being okay. And two, I've seen this done better before. Why would I settle for something passable when I can have something great? Well, there you go. I talked about the Last Straw movie. Surely there's not going to be any more animated movies, right? What do you mean, The Getaway? That book's old. I reviewed it like 8 years ago. Wait, no!